happening, folks? So just going to do a bit of a weekly reflection. Just look back at the previous week, trades I've taken, where I get in, work it out, the reasons why, and of course maybe where I could have improved. And that so I've started to do these weekly reflections alongside my weekly outlook. So I thought, as well just continue them anyway. It's some form of content in a sense, and just something to put out there. So just looking back at last week, I took a total of 6 trades last week. Now let me just have a look here and see how many of them came in my session. Yeah, so 2 of those trades came in my session out of the 6 your London session. The remaining 4 came outside London session, sort of based on, in my opinion, what made sense, what made more sense. And for the whole week, I sort of had a gain of 2.81% based on my actual gain. And based on my analysis, if I didn't touch anything in terms of like managing trades, I would have had a return of 4.2%. So done myself short there of 1.2% roughly, or 1.4%. That's totally fine. One thing especially this week which stood out to me was just that my upside of my management of my upside was quite negative, compared to the likes of the month of March. And what was I going to say there? I'm just having a look at my journal spreadsheet here in the other monitor. But yeah, so 6 total trades, a total gain there of almost 3%, which isn't too bad. Could have been 4, near enough, if I didn't touch anything. I'm kind of just going to break these down. This is the whole week here. So the first trade I took was on the 10th, which was Monday. And the sort of the thought process behind this position was leading into the session. My session starts here, so we sort of have a mixed indecision bias based on my weekly outlook. Clearly see here that I've made a note to say buys above makes sense, and the reason here is because it's been above the support of this 4-hour range. And then of course I made a little note here to say cleaner buys are above here, because again that's above the sort of like the mid-range resistance within there. So we can clearly see above this point with clean movement to the upside and to the downside. So I didn't get into a position during my session. My trade actually came at about 1 o'clock. And if I could have just traded this position solely off the 4-hour, but I don't think I was sort of looking at the charts then. I was probably working or whatnot. But when we close inside this zone, pull back out of the zone, the previous structure, be able to continue down and close back inside, makes sense to buy this, test up into here or even here. And I actually took this trade based on the 1-hour chart, and this was sort of my idea. Kind of got a range in here. When we come back outside of that, above here, it makes sense to take that trade up to that resistance. Clean traffic. And I think the total trade was 2.13%. Let me just get rid of that tool. 2.14%. But I actually closed out of my position here at this. I believe this is a 4-hour resistance. And we can clearly see how this zone was utilized. Once we got above and within, we were able to hold support above the 4-hour body and remain within the zone, and then price is able to push out, and eventually they get target they get achieved. So I closed out for 1.24% on that option, just based on coming out of the 4-hour resistance. But the sort of trade idea was to play this overall triangle of love, and it's sort of based on my outlook, based on the areas where I've marked up where buys make more sense from. So this is what I've been doing for the past 2 months near enough, just where, well, basically from March, so not even 2 months. But sort of just marking up like what makes sense. You know, if we get a close above here, it makes sense to continue. Right, simple as that. And it's been working for me, and it's sort of strange because like I know trading the session is consistent. But I'm also trading what makes sense outside of a session with a solid time frame of an entry. So it's a bit more of a relaxed approach. And I feel like I have the ability to do that. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be looking at charts all day, every day, and I'm stuck on the charts, because that's not what I want. But it's more so, right? It makes sense to, if we see this, to do this, right? And that's the sort of approach I've taken to my session trading, and also options that maybe come outside of the session. You know, with me sort of trading, taking a bit of a step back and trading like an hourly time frame. You know, I'm not always going to get trades in my session, and some of the better opportunities for the idea may come outside of the session. So this trade, made sense. I took it up, and was able to just come out of the trade for a profit there, which is good. But clearly see that my upside management of this, you know, I cost myself some of this position because the trade I did play out, but that's totally fine. I get out of 4-hour resistance, which I'm happy enough with. But my upside management of that position was negative. So if I just kind of close that one out there and I just look at my next buy came the day after, on the 11th, on the Tuesday, and that position came here. So this position was taken in the evening at around 10 to 9 at night. So way outside of a trade session, but something I thought made a lot of sense. And it sort of leads on. It was basically completing the idea from my previous trade. We can clearly see that the idea was to target up into the resistance. I came out of my initial trade here, but what price done was, once price closed above the 4-hour resistance, price was able to hold support above this. So it made sense to complete the overall idea from the day before. And that's exactly what I done. You know, I got involved in a buy. The return on the buy position was 1.35%. I actually closed out of the position for 1% up here, and I believe the reason for that was because it was coming up to a new hourly open. It was late in the day, and I was happy with 1%, so I got involved in that position, and that position was solely based on the 1-hour time frame. The 6 trades that I took this week, 4 of them were taken based on the 1-hour, and 2 of them were taken based on the 30-minute. And the 2 trades that lost were the 30-minute options. All the trades I took on the 1-hour, I did come out positive on those, which is good. So, like last month of March, I took a total of 8 trades, and I had 8 wins, and they were all based on the 1-hour chart. So, kind of bringing that forward into April, especially this week, you know, I took 6 trades, probably a little bit too much to be honest. But out of those 6, the ones that were taken on the 1-hour chart were all winning. So the hourly chart's obviously working for me. So I'm gonna, you know, consistently continue to do that. But this is a simple trade. This one, you know, we form a higher support, we start to break above price performed its lower wick, started the flip, push above the resistance, buy, makes sense to complete the idea. But I sort of come out of the trade there. So that was come out for 1%, and again the upside management of that trade was negative because the idea ended up completing. But you would have had to endure some form of downside, which I wasn't comfortable doing, and I was happy with just to take the 1%. So I'll just close that one off. Buy on 12th was this position, and This position was taken at 4:10. And the sort of idea on this position was looking at this on a 4 hour, most recent high, price pushes up, forms a new high, which is a new target, price pulls back to previous level of structure, previous resistance, price closes above the resistance. Again, based on my weekly outlook, I marked this area out as the area where buys make sense from, buys above. So we can clearly see once we get above here, upside. The way I looked at this was so simplistic, was prices just put in a new high, new target, pull back the previous structure, close back above previous 4 hour resistance from previous structure, from previous resistance zone, solid close above. It makes a lot of sense for this to complete this to the upside. So I took this trade on the 1 hour chart, and I closed this position up here, and I came out of this trade for 0.8%, but the overall return was sort of 1% on this one. So again, the upside management of that was negative, but this trade to me made a lot of sense. It closed above the 4 hours structure, formed a new target, pulled back, tested the structure, solid support above the resistance. I'm looking to buy and looking for this resistance to hold. I don't want to see price come back below this. And again, price was able to continue up. And I have been playing trades on the 1 hour chart. I have been practicing holding positions for longer. And although my upside management is a bit negative, I'm holding positions for a lot longer than I would have. So where I'm getting 1.2%, 1%, 0.8%, you know, I would have been coming out of those trades a lot earlier. For instance, this trade, for example, may be coming out of the daily resistance, or maybe coming out of this resistance, but this idea makes sense. So why not allow price a chance to play that idea? So that's been something I've been practicing recently, is just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because when it comes to trading higher risk down the line, I want to be comfortable in allowing positions to play out, because again, this makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for this to go where it did based on structure. So that was that trade, pretty straightforward. The next trade I took, let me just close this one out. The next trade I took was a sell on, what day was this? Thursday. Now this trade, when I came into this session, the bass was bullish, by the way. So we have the open, the 2 a.m. candle, and this was bullish, right? So buys made sense based on the bass. I was having a good week up until this point, and I was happy to give this a shot. And the reason I give this a shot was because price was in a 4 hour resistance zone. When I looked at this trade on the 1 hour chart, I looked at this as a whole resistance zone. 1, 2, 3, 4 hours of price holding above resistance, but failing to continue, breaking down. It made sense for me to trade this down to this, because when I came to the session, I looked at this and I says, God, buys make sense, right? To me, I wanted to buy above the resistance here. So for me, buys weren't valid for me until we're up around 166,600, right? So if price isn't able to push up to there and starts to break down during volume, and range, and breaks of range to the downside, I was happy to give this a shot. Now I understood that session bias is bullish, and just because it makes sense, this could just be a pullback for further upside, because the session bias is bullish and we are bullish. So my idea was, if I looked at this, and I believe this was one of the trades I took on the 30-minute chart. So looking at this on the 30-minute time frame, my sort of range for targets was this structure here. I was looking at this and I was saying, well, if we have 4 hour resistance here and we are above and we break down, I'm going to trade this down to here because that's what makes sense to me. I was happy to give it a shot, but it didn't work out. So this candle here, we started to push up and we started to break down. And when we started to come below these lows, I said, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot because I was anticipating like continuation with like volume, because this candle was gearing up and it was a lot larger than all these. When this was breaking down, I was thinking it's at least going to go down into these supports, so it was for plus 0.7%, but it didn't continue. And it was probably a little bit foolish of me to take this trade, and the reason being is I'm trading kind of based off this R here, this sort of looking to get down to these range lows, but there is a daily resistance here. There also is a 30-minute support here where price has sort of done this. So I think what I was thinking at the time was, well, volume's going to come in, or it looks like volume is coming in. We can easily break this, right? And we did. You know, price pushed into a profitable position, so it did. Or how many pips? You know, 12 pips or so. My target was what, 20? But we just didn't get the continuation. And that's probably because we're trading into a daily resistance, higher supports in a bullish bias. Just because we come below the 4-hour resistance doesn't mean that's the upside done, because the 4-hour candle's still open. And of course, looking at the 4-hour candle, what happened? We dipped down and then we pushed up and we sort of got the continuously upside line with the bias. But my get out of jail card was the Asian range, was Asian high and Asian low. Coming back in the Asian range, that's not what I want to see. So I closed my trade here, full position for a loss of 0.5%. You know, based on my week so far, I was playing at like 3% gain so far. So I was happy to give this a shot and see what could happen. And that was that. The second trade I took on the same day was actually a buy, and I feel like this is a trade I feel like I shouldn't have been in. Reflecting back in the trade, let me just pull it up here. This was the trade, right? This trade was taken based on the 30-minute chart. And the reason I took this trade was because when we failed to continue down and we started to come above where I was looking to buy, you know, pre-session, I was like, right, okay, maybe we're going to get some form of continuation now. So when price was able to get above the resistance, I was looking at this little level here, this sort of resistance zone high. Price came above, pulled down, formed a higher support, pushed up, and reacted off this 4-hour resistance. And then price started to pull down, but price failed to continue once it closed below the support, and the sort of support zone from like here to here held, right? And this 30-minute candle closed a strong bullish candle. So I thought to myself, right, price has tried to push down, failed, now we've formed a higher support. What's the chances the price is now going to continue, right? So I thought to myself, that makes sense, right? I've kind of given myself a stop loss of 30 pips to get a 1-to-1 to a next 4-hour resistance here. Because I'm expecting continuation, I'm expecting price to push through this 4-hour resistance and continue the move. And that is where I feel like I was a little bit, maybe, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I think I maybe put a little bit too much trust in my analysis, because what I can clearly see here is this is a 30-minute resistance, this is a 30-minute resistance, this is a 1-hour resistance. Price has already reacted off the 4-hour resistance, which is above my entry. So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me ban here. Just because we're holding support above this structure doesn't mean it's going to go up. Does it have a higher probability of doing so? Yes. Does it mean it's going to? No. So I think I was a little bit silly in taking the entry at resistance based on thinking it's going to continue. And based on what I can see, I feel like the better entry would have came above the 4-hour, right? Because what I could have then done is just say, for instance, price gets above here. I could have then used this zone along with this 4-hour resistance as my management for downside. So I could have afforded to maybe have a stop below here or below here and say to myself, well, if we get into a trade here, because we're above not only this, this, and this, if price fails to continue and breaks below, I know we're then playing within this range. So if price doesn't get back above, there's a greater chance of this range being tested, which is where my stop loss is. So I could have managed my position in here, right? And I feel like this option is a much safer option than this because I'm above all these levels, whereas in this trade I'm buying at these levels. And I feel as well like I took a loss earlier on in the day, like during my session leading up to London Open at 5 to 8. So I feel like I probably shouldn't have been in this position as well. And this position was taken at let me see, yeah, like quarter to 1 in the afternoon. So I feel like it wasn't the best of trades, and I did close the position here. So once we started to, I was expecting this candle, after seeing the support, I was expecting the support to get confirmed and a second bullish candle, or at least the support respected. But once we closed below, it says, you know what, I've taken a loss today already. I can close out here and take a complete total loss of 1% over 2 trades. That's a good job. So I closed out there, took the loss. So that was the 2 options that came on the 30-minute chart. And let me see, upside management. Let me just see here. So yeah, that's that trade. And then my final trade of the week came on Friday. And this was the trade here. Oh, let me just pull on the tool and the close position. So my final trade came on Friday, and this trade came at 8:45. And this trade was simply trading against my bias. Leading into the session, my bias was bullish. But one thing to note is just because we're bullish doesn't necessarily mean we're going to continue up. And the reason I say that is because what happened previously is the 4-hour structure was validated to the downside. So this is a sort of higher support. We put in a higher support here, and then price breaks this support. So because we're trading below this, any pullback could just be the potential second leg for the third leg down, because we've sort of, it's an indication of potentially a change in rotation to the downside. Because why did we not respect this support when we're in this candle to the upside? So when I looked at the chart in the morning, I was looking at this and I says, this is where price is trading in here, this sort of range, right? To me, looking at the session, coming to the session, well, where does buys make sense from? Well, I don't want to trade above here because the range from here to the daily resistance is 9 pips. Here it's 14 pips. Clearly above this level, there's cleaner traffic and a bigger range. So for me, when I came to the session, yes, the bias is buys, and I says, well, I'm going to buy above here. This is where I want to buy from. But I also understood my understanding of the 4-hour structure and says, well, this could just be a pullback further downside. So if price does start to break, I want to be taking trades below this support zone, but also below the 4-hour resistance, because I'm selling away from the resistance. I'm not allowing the resistance to potentially be this if I'm below it. And again, price was up here, so I could see volume come in to this candle the whole way, and it's pushing and pushing and pushing. What time is it? London Open. Took the trade off the 1 hour chart. Entry here below, stops above. What I basically done was from my entry to the target was 23 pips. So I just says, well, where's a 1-to-1? So I just popped in 23 pip stop loss, popped it up here, 1-to-1, happy enough, execute. And I was just going to manage if price started to come back above like these sort of supports, because price could have came above here and then maybe come back down and respected this structure because it's just broke out of it. But volume came in, price closed here, this candle open, pushed down. Because it's Friday, I sort of took a couple losses, yesterday or the day before. I just opted, you know what, I'll close this trade out, take the profit for today, that's great. So overall return was 0.96. Excuse me, I closed out here at 165,601 for 0.77. So my upside management there was negative. But I was happy enough with that. And then price did open up and continue the volume down and push down before pulling back. And you could have taken that trade there to target the target, but that's outside of the session. Plus Friday was done. I was happy enough to just close out there. I didn't want to get into any positions late on the Friday, given it's the end of the week. But that's sort of like my weekly reflection. 6 trades taken. I feel like it's probably it is a little bit much for me in a sense, because typically I don't trade that often. And I feel like I maybe got a little bit carried away, in trying to take trades at resistance and stuff, rather than just being a bit more patient and saying, well, where's the safest position? Right, let me put myself in the safest position. So happy enough to come away with that for the week. So plus 2.8%. 6 trades taken, 4 wins, 2 losses, managed my downside, but also managed my upside, which was sort of negatively impacted the overall return. Happy enough with that. From an analysis standpoint, 4 to 6 played out in terms of entry to target or entry to stop loss. So, and then again, takeaways as well as the 1 hour. 1 hour chart worked for me really well again. So that's sort of 8, 9, 12 trades in a row where when I've used a 1 hour chart for entry and like targets and that sort of stuff, structure, it's they've all resulted in positive outcomes, which is great. So that's just a little bit of a weekly reflection on how my week went, what trades I get into, why, sort of areas, and primarily all the buys, or maybe 1 or 2 were sort of, or 1 maybe was based on my weekly outlook, and the areas I plotted that made sense to buy from, based on looking left and structure. So hopefully you can continue that into this week coming, but that's just my reflection on how that week went for me. So thank you.